One in Three is intended for mature audiences. Episodes contain explicit content and may be triggering as they often include violence and other varying forms of abuse such as emotional, psychological, sexual, and physical. In most cases, names have been changed to protect all involved. Please note, statements and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of my own. Hi, Warriors. Welcome to One in Three. I'm your host, Ingrid. While this podcast started off with a focus on domestic violence, you may have noticed it's expanded into conversations around human trafficking because these two worlds are often deeply intertwined. My guest today brings a powerful and unique perspective. Eric Robinson's career took him from Baptist pastor to FBI agent, and he's here to share insights into the realities of human trafficking. Let's dive in. Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I am doing very well, Ingrid. I appreciate you having me on the show.
I appreciate you coming on, and I'm thrilled to have you on One in Three. Before we start talking about everything we're going to talk about, could you share a little bit about yourself so listeners can get to know you?
I just retired two months ago from 24 years as an FBI agent, where I investigated just about every violation the Bureau had at some point. Crimes against children, gangs, drugs, public corruption, white collar crimes, counterterrorism. And I also got to serve for 15 years as a SWAT operator, which brought me into a lot of interesting experiences along the way. So started out my career in Chicago and then moved back home to the Toledo, Ohio area where life is a lot slower and much better.
Chicago's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Oh yeah. Also before that, I was a Baptist pastor.
Oh yeah. And that helped play into your role a little bit, I think, probably with the FBI.
Absolutely. We've got all sorts of technology in the FBI. We have warrants that we can write. We've got databases, and yet at some point you have to interact with humans. So those skills that I relied upon, that I had developed in ministry, definitely came to work regularly as I was interacting with victims, with witnesses, handling informants, and even interacting with criminals. So those things that I learned about this is how people act and what they need, that was at play for 24 years in the FBI.
I'm sure. So you have one of those careers that I would just love to sit and every single day have you tell me a new story or multiple stories and go on and on. But we're not going to do that. I know you've guested on lots of other podcasts, so if people want to hear more stories, they can search you out. But to focus on the theme for One in Three, we talk about domestic violence, and I've recently also dove into human trafficking because there is so much intertwined there. And there's a lot of misunderstanding around human sex trafficking. And people, when you think of trafficking, I think you and I discussed this during our pre-interview, the whole Liam Neeson, I will find you.
Yeah, people think of traffic, and it's unfortunate that the word traffic is used because naturally you think I am taking you somewhere. So I have kidnapped you and now I have you in this area. You could be legitimately, just say, for example, as a woman, you could be trafficked and in your home by an abusive partner. You could be never moving, no physical abuse, but in federal standards, there could be force, fraud, or coercion that leads into this. That's for an adult. For a child, you just, obviously promoting someone to have sex with adults as a child, that's trafficking right there. But for an adult, they could be sex trafficked without ever leaving the area, just through coercion or the notion of a threat. There doesn't have to be any type of physical handling that goes on.
And that is where there's just so much misunderstanding. I had a guest on who spoke about how she was trafficked by her partner. Mm-hmm. And even though there wasn't an exchange of money, that there's still this gratification that her partner at the time was, I don't know, whatever gratification, his own control gratification, sexual gratification, whatever his source was, that was the gain. It wasn't monetary, but that was the
Right.
gain.
Right. And it can show up in so many ways. So in Toledo, Ohio, there is this notion that there's generations of trafficking because in 2005, there was a sting in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania at a truck stop, and an inordinate number of teenage girls and pimps were rounded up that were from Toledo. So Toledo got this idea like, oh, wow, it's everywhere. And what I had seen then from that is, I mean, thankfully, the positive is now a focus was on sex trafficking in this area. And so the local universities now started holding regular conferences. But the negative side is stories came about that, oh, did you hear about that girl who was kidnapped from the mall and they stuck a needle in her when she was in the bathroom? You need to be careful. And those things are unnecessary. They're not true. The trafficking that we saw were from runaway girls who were now on their own, desperate, needing to raise money, and were prostituting on their own. And along comes a pimp who can manipulate and keeps them doing it, but perhaps even more, but benefits off of it. So whereas Ingrid, you or I run into this 15-year-old girl who is prostituting and we say, oh, let me help you, the pimp comes along and does the opposite of what you or I would do, or a reasonable human being to take care of them.
Okay, so then where do you draw the line between this is prostitution and apologies if either one of us are using terminology that's offensive, because I know that politically speaking, it's sex work, but what's the difference between somebody prostituting and having a manager versus trafficking?
That's trafficking.
Right.
So, so if I in any way gain a benefit from the promotion of your prostitution, your sex work, that's trafficking. Legitimately, if I knowingly drive you to the hotel, that's trafficking. If I promote you online because I know how to work this website better than you, that's trafficking. Now, in minor cases where I do that once, no one I doubt would get charged. But if in many ways it is legitimately, if anyone takes an action other than what you or I would do in encountering a girl who's prostituting, that's trafficking to support this.
Right. And okay, so then technically speaking, can an underage person be considered a prostitute, or is that
Well, it's a simple label, and I agree. Sex worker is a term that's used often as well. But these are these were girls, these were teenage girls, and then obviously we would run into adults, some women who may be trafficked but are just under coercion. I had one investigation that involved, well, actually we've had a couple. Um, uh, Someone who had mental illness but then was being taken advantage as an adult, and that's the sex trafficking, and there's even labor trafficking that can be looked into as well.
all sorts of things? So I don't want to put you on the spot to make any just calls on this case, but a lot of people are familiar with the Diddy case
Hmm.
and how that was determined to not be sex trafficking. But I watched the documentary on Netflix, and to me, that is trafficking because he's using coercion, he's using violence to force her into sex acts that she wouldn't necessarily have been doing.
Yeah, that's you running into the dilemma that as agents we would often run into, not just in this case, but where there's truth, and then there's proving in a court of law. Like, there's many things that we would run up against in the FBI where I know that this is true. I could tell you, and I could tell 100 other people, and they go, yep, that seems right. And then let's start arguing it back and forth with attorneys, and how does that apply to the law? So I don't know in detail, but yes, everything that I had seen about that sounded like, yep, that sounds like trafficking, but it's much more difficult to scholarly define it and then legally prove it.
Right. And the legal system's difficult in all, and I talk about that frequently on this podcast, especially with family court and victims of domestic violence going into there and what you have to prove, and biases and opinions of those who are in charge of making the decisions. That is all very complicated. So, in other words, trafficking is happening in everyone's communities. It's out there.
It is. And again, these are, if you see runaway girls, that's going to be obvious. The issues are, if you have adult women, like, you could sit down and discuss this with them, and they would insist that they're not being trafficked because they don't see it. It's like, it's, two fish saying, how's the water, and the other says, what's water. When the victim is in it, they don't realize it until later. And we I saw that with some of the teen victims, that they I had so many snotty tissues in my vehicle because they're crying while we're taking away the love of their life. This man who's 10, 15 years older, and they don't realize it. This is probably the first adult that's ever shown them love. Well, that love is manipulative, and this man knows exactly how to get her to do what he wants, but she's feeling love, and we're breaking that up. And it's not until much later that the separation comes, and they can say, oh, okay, yeah, I get it, that was terrible.
Yeah, because these guys, and I'm going to generalize by saying guys, but women can do the same thing.
I did have a female pimp.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're good at what they do. They know how to manipulate, they know how to take advantage of vulnerable people, vulnerable situations, and how to keep you trapped too.
Yeah, and also they'll have other women who've now worked up the chain, who then are used by the man to keep them in line, keep the herd in place. So that that goes on, and then these men are learning from that culture, not just the steps to take, how they control women, but also that is the height of masculinity. You are praised for your ability to control women, and you know how many different girls you have in your pen that you've got. All of these things now motivate the pimp, the man, to find more women and keep them in control, and use them to make money.
I guess a very popular, not popular is not the word. Everybody knows about the big one, Epstein, and that whole hierarchy of how he had involved other women to get victims, keep the victims in place, and continue to find more.
Well, right, and with Ghislaine Maxwell, well, I can trust her. She's a woman. I mean, I can understand how teen girls or young women might fear a man recruiting, and see ulterior motives, but this is another woman, so that makes it safe. Well, that's on stage that we can see. This same thing is going to be done, but woman to woman, girl to girl, closer to their age. You don't have a 40-year-old woman saying, "Yeah, come along and do this." You've got a 21-year-old woman trying to convince a 17-year-old girl that everything is safe, and this is what the benefits you're going to get out of it.
Well, and of course, that story's hit the media so much. And so many people there's books you can read, there's documentaries. And it's really easy for all of us to watch and say, I would never, ever, ever have gotten involved with something like that. But it's not just this blatant, hey, I'm going to go traffic you. You in?
Yeah. And then you see the reluctance for people to step forward because, I mean, time and again with Cosby or others, people, women, victims, are reluctant to be the first because it's shameful, because they've probably tried to speak up before and no one listened. So why bother? And now, finally it takes, almost takes the one valiant one to move ahead, or a group coming together to raise their hand and say, this is what happened.
Right. And even in those cases, again, I'll refer to the Epstein trial, is that there was a group of people. It's been publicized. It's national, international news, and still we're not really seeing the consequences of these individuals' actions.
What's happened? I haven't gotten justice, so why bother? And then that makes it more difficult for the next group of victims. They're like, look, like powerful men can get away with it. Why should I bother?
Right. So I suppose, what are signs that if you come across somebody that they could be a victim of trafficking, that you might pick up on?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can always ask, but as I said, these are unreliable witnesses because they may just say no, and you can't leave it at just that. When we worked with guardian ad litems, so the attorneys who would represent the juveniles, we would work with those in the juvenile court system, and they would let us know, like, look, we had a girl come in and she had to stay for 2 weeks in lockup, but she had the newest iPhone with her. She had jewelry. There was a 26-year-old man waiting for her that definitely wasn't her brother. So those were the things that people were bringing to us that we could see. So what doesn't fit together is runaway girl, new iPhone, girl on the streets, nice jewelry, nice clothes. You know, that's what you have to rely upon more. And it's been years now that the hotel industry has very successfully been educating their people to say, this is what you will see. So they're the ones more likely to see a man 10 years older than someone strong arming, keeping her quiet, keeping her isolated.
That makes sense. So what happens? How does the FBI do? Does the FBI get involved with every trafficking case, or is it specific?
Uh, not every trafficking case we can, because there's going to be, like, if a local department comes upon this, they'll often take it federal for us because the charge is going to be a lot harder. So we like that, but we'll also work the task force that I ran for a time, and the one that's still going now beyond me, works with local police and state agencies so that we can mix and match as it applies. So, look, we're trying to locate these juveniles. So we're seeking to set up stings. Okay, the juvenile didn't come, but this pimp brought an adult woman. So now we're going to have local charges because there's nothing we can bring federally. So we're working in coalition with each other to say what's the best that we can bring against this individual.
Let's talk about that task force for a minute. So what
Mhm.
was it? What did they do? Or what do they
Uh,
do?
so it has morphed over the years. So in 2005, when the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania sting happened, the FBI said we need to set up a task force in Toledo, Ohio. And because of that, we had Pete, who was a detective for Toledo police, on the task force along with others. And we had multiple agents. So we were very successful. So long before I got involved, there were agents working on this task force to try to recover the teen victims. And because of that, because we were successful, then Toledo got this, hey, look, these guys are arresting so many pimps, and they're seeing so many juveniles recovered. And the reason was because Toledo's a small city and the FBI had put a lot of effort into this. So I liken it to, your neighbor kid gets a BB gun and starts shooting squirrels, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, we got a lot of squirrels around here. Like, no, it's just neighbor kids shooting a lot of squirrels. So we were getting a lot of arrests, a lot of stats, and then it got more and more attention. Over the years, it has moved from the work for teenage girls who are being trafficked more to what is referred to as travelers. So typically men who are going to travel to meet up with an undercover who is posing as an underage individual, or someone who is posing online as an individual looking to trade children in the most disgusting ways that you can think of.
Okay. And are there Are there task forces? What?
It's like attorneys general, task
Right?
force. Yeah.
Right. All throughout the country, or are there specific groups that are located in different sections?
Largely so. The FBI has 56 field offices, and while I don't know, I'm going to make the assumption that each field office is going to have a task force. And then in Toledo, we are off of Cleveland as the headquarters city, and so they had some people working it there. And frankly, Toledo was working it more than Cleveland was, even though Cleveland's a larger city. So it all depends on what's in the area. There will be offshoots in outside of the main field office. There could be ones in, cities that are not the larger ones that are also working it. And in some cases, it could be just one agent and a police officer, and they're working both the distribution of CSAM, child sexual abuse material, also, maybe working the teen prostitution or the traveler cases.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, I'm hopping back and forth, but my brain, that's how my brain works. So, I was thinking about the guardian ad litem. What is the process once you determine an underage person is being trafficked? Do you immediately get them out of that situation? Do you have to have the right amount of evidence to be able to? And then what happens from there?
So when we were running these operations to locate and rescue the girls, I mean, honestly, the easier part was locating them and, trying to separate them from the pimp. The hard thing was keeping it that way. So we didn't want to be arresting or putting the victims in jail, and yet many times we had to, because if we just sent them right back to the foster home, right back to the single mom or the abusive dad, they're out. We'd have to set up vehicles outside to pick her up, and so that was the difficult part of really trying to get them separated and then start that tough love to sink in, like, hey, you can trust us. Well, they've been running from the police for years while they're doing this. The police are trying to ruin their one source of income. We're actually doing the same thing, but we're trying to convince them. So between that, the social workers, the guardian ad litem, our victim coordinators, we're trying to get them to a place where they can start being rational. Yeah, I mean, 15-year-olds aren't rational in the first place, and yet here we are. We've got a runaway who's on top of that all being abused.
So, how often have you seen substance abuse being used as a tactic of control or a form of control? I'm just thinking because I had another guest on who came on and talked about how she was heavy into like every drug. And I think it was probably partly as her coping
Mhm.
mechanism of what was happening. But then I think it was also utilized as a form of control to keep her from being able to leave.
Yeah, that's more likely in the adults who are being either, and I'll just use the term traffic because sometimes, they're willingly involved, or there may be the coercion or manipulation through the drugs. But yeah, and it makes sense that the person you're talking to is using the drugs, because if you can, I bring this up often to try to shock people, and I know it's impolite, but especially speaking with a woman, if you can imagine what it would take for you to cross that threshold to say, I will now go have sex with strange men multiple times a day, that's a huge barrier to cross. So in order for you to cross it, you're probably broken already, or you are so very desperate that you're just going to close your eyes and go. So yeah, you need drugs. Like, I'm so hurt, I'm so traumatized that I'm willing to have sex with strange men all day long, disgusting people. I need drugs to numb out and get away from that, of course.
Right. And I was going to say Pretty Woman, the movie Pretty Woman, that
Oh
glorifies it
yeah,
and makes it like this. You have your clients are Richard Gere type of,
who treat you sweet.
yes, you turn into a princess at the end. How often, because trafficking can happen in these homes, it can be an intimate partner, it can be a sibling, a parent, or whatever. How often do you see multiple victims associated with one case, or is it often just one person?
No, the cases that we worked were, I mean, it would be a pimp who is trying to get a stable of women as much as he can control. And again, and if I may, the term that they use is the bottom bitch. So that is going to be often the more tenured prostitute who is now, the pimp can trust her. And now she's actually, in a sense, the office manager handling them. And so, he's going to look to have two, three, four, five girls of varying ages, and knowing very well that if he gets caught with any of the underage girls, then he's spending a long time in federal prison. If he gets caught on a state or local charge of promoting prostitution, yeah, he might spend a few months depending on what's going on. So, you know, all of that is being done so that he can maximize his income, knowing that younger girls are going to earn more, but also try to minimize his exposure to prison time.
Ugh, okay, so I'm jumping again. So if somebody recognizes that somebody may be getting trafficked, either child or adult, I suppose, do they notify local authorities? Do they try to talk? I don't want people to
Yeah.
themselves in danger by trying to intervene themselves. But then
Yeah. Yeah. The difficulty is if you intervene and now you may be faced with violence as well. Um, and the hard thing here is your question kind of veers into a different topic that I usually address with people, and that is, if you're coming to the police or you're coming to the FBI with a possible criminal violation, do it in person. Don't just, call the hotline. Have information ready, some evidence, not just, I really think this is happening because of these vague things. Because cops are busy, FBI is busy, and if there's an opportunity to blow you off, we will, because we don't want to chase something that won't be there. But having all that you need to show that this may be happening, and if anything that you can do then to get involved under the direction of the FBI or police, then being aware of that. Like, hey, if you need to, I can go into the house because I've been in there before. I can ask her these questions, whatever it might be, to say, look, we can get some more confirming evidence too.
have you ever been able to, for someone that's underage, and you can't prove that there's actual trafficking, but you can prove that there is sex with a minor? Do you ever
Mhm.
take that route, like a
Yes.
statutory thing to get them to safety?
Yes. And so I've had cases with that as well, where, I had one case where a guy traveled about an hour and a half to have a relationship. He was 27, I think, and the boy was 13, but he looked like he was 10. And I mean, it was one where the boy was willingly involved. So, at first you look at it, and the parents came in with their son because they had seen things on his iPad of a man conversing with him, and the boy was like happy, joking around. And I remember thinking, this is unusual. Like, he doesn't seem to be traumatized in the least. And he talked about how, they went on outings, they went to an amusement park, and yes, also they engaged in sexual activity. And it wasn't until, again, there became more and more separation and more adults involved speaking some wisdom, not directly to the boy, but about the topic, that he then started becoming angry about what had been done to him. Now he started seeing this as, okay, well, this isn't just, a boyfriend who's older. This is a man who took advantage, and this is wrong, and this is rape.
Right. So the whole grooming process. So in that case, his parents weren't involved
No.
in that part. How did they find out?
They the the subject suggested, I don't know, I forget how they first were in contact, but he suggested they go to Kick, and on the Kick app, now they're sharing discussions that a man shouldn't be having with a boy. And from that, it became easy for us to get a search warrant on him. So the parents were very calm as well until we had the interview with the victim, with the boy. And he talked about how one night he was staying up late watching movies, and the subject said, "Oh, can I come over?" And he had sexually assaulted the boy in the parents' house in the basement while they were asleep. And then they just had to deal with, what could we have done? Like, this is right under our roof and we didn't know it. And I, I am guessing, because it kind of transferred to me, that it felt like violating further, not just their son, but this was in their space, in their house.
I mean, he probably did that on purpose too, just to have that extra. Did they know him?
No,
Oh
no,
my gosh.
he was just somebody who was out looking
Ugh.
for boys, and he said he loved him. And again, this is someone who came from a warped position and thought this warped idea was fine, that it could be love, while also knowing it's not accepted by society, so I have to hide it. So all of that together, very complex, that you have people who say, I know this is wrong by law and by what people would say. I don't think it's morally wrong because I feel love, and he expresses love to me. And so that's how I can say this is fine, but we still need to hide it.
So actually that story makes me think of another question. There are so many apps out there, and the internet is at literally everyone's fingertips. Are there any specific apps that are considered more dangerous for children to be on? I know I've heard a lot about Discord that and I just I have kids and they have devices, but I'm very, very specific. There is no interacting with other people. Any friends on any games actually has to be a friend that I know
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah. And are they hooked up to your Apple ID as well,
Yes,
so that if they would download a new app?
that's right.
And that's going to be probably the biggest key without being too invasive. And then it's on you. I'll just say this, and I say this less as an FBI agent, more as a father, that the standards need to be set young, so that you don't get to be 16 and all of a sudden you go, oh, this is a little too far, and I'm going to start pulling the reins back. That early on, that 10, 11, 12, now that we're moving into this, of saying, hey, this is normal, this is how we're going to have some control and some input. I want you to have freedom, but also, within these guidelines. So the the earlier that a parent can say, here's a very natural thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that I know what apps you have, and then I'm going to have a conversation with you about it. I'd like you to be honest, because otherwise then you have a situation where things are hidden, and the only reason the parents found out was happenstance.
So scary. And I know the statistics of abuse happening to children, specifically sexual abuse, it's more often somebody they know
Yeah, absolutely.
versus a stranger. Does the same thing apply for trafficking of children? More often someone they know?
From my experience, which is not going to be a huge sample size because it's not like it's 100 different girls, but uh, no, it won't be. It hasn't been people they know, because the people they know aren't usually the monsters who can say, "Oh, I I'll traffic girls. I have no problem with that." It's it's most often someone looking out for them, making an appeal at the mall. So, the mall story isn't true where you're kidnapped, but the mall story is true where I'm trying to make an appeal to you with buying you a gift, and we'll see where this goes. Or people chatting online, what comes next. And then for the past couple of years, the FBI has been looking into an online group called 764, which is a disgusting blend of child pornography and Nazism and gore and cutting, and they prey upon teens who often are in forums dealing with suicide or loneliness or whatever, and now teens are manipulating teens to harm themselves and also to share CSAM.
Oh my goodness.
It's disgusting.
Well, and the thing is, when you're outside of it and you're hearing something like this, it just sounds like such an obvious, oh, these are really bad people trying to get me to do something horrible. But again, they're not coming out as this, I'm part of this group that's known for all these disgusting things, and I want you to be a participant in it.
Hmm.
It's taking advantage again of vulnerable people, those with depression or contemplating suicide.
Right. And then they turn around and they're now brought into this where now they are the ones who are trying to gain clout by doing the same to the next. And it's very circular. So all of this goes on, and some of the victims and perpetrators, again, 14, 15, 12, it's mainly children to children, teen to teen. The parents just they don't have any control, and that's either because they're not good parents, or no one could control this child. And I had one father, I contacted him because we thought his daughter was a victim, and then she was also a perpetrator. And he said, like, he goes, "Hey, can I talk to you? Like, do you have any advice? Like, my wife and I lock our door to our bedroom because our daughter like tries to break in and has fits." And they just, he says, like, he's almost crying. He says, "I don't know what to do. I don't want to call the police on her." And so we had a discussion there about steps he could take.
That's so terrifying of when you're stuck in the place of where you're afraid of your child, but you're also afraid for your child.
Yes. And she definitely had mental illness, and that's part of what drives them into these groups. It's nihilistic, it's full of gore, and then they're harming themselves and trying to get another teen to maybe kill a family pet on film, and they create these highlight reels that they can share and gain clout. But here's someone with mental illness who's got something. The dad wants to help her, and she's not only denying that, but getting further into something that's awful online.
This is so horrifying. It makes you want to just like live in a bubble.
Let's share some good stories
Yeah, let's
now.
do that.
Let's move into something positive.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're gonna have to change the podcast a little bit. What's a happy thing? Well, okay, so you are writing a book. Let's talk about that.
Yes. Yes, let's talk about that. That's very happy. I have written a book that will be published and out in the fall. It's called Irreverent because, as we mentioned, I was a reverend, but we got involved in some irreverent things. So it's Irreverent, from Saving Souls to Chasing Sinners in the FBI. And I write about what would happen if you took a Baptist pastor who'd never handled a gun before and you stuck him in the FBI for 24 years. Because I got to see some crazy things and some remarkable things, and was a part of some investigations that made a real impact on the community. And yet I was just a guy who used to be a pastor.
So is this a book that's based on facts, a factual book?
Yes, all
Okay.
facts. And I never lost the fascination of being in the FBI from the very first when they said, "Hey, come on board." And I went, "Are you serious?" And there are many times where I just sit back and go, "I can't believe I get to do this. This is amazing." So I got to be a part of this. And when agents would sit around and tell stories, like we're all telling crazy stories. And then I realized, oh my gosh, like we're just commonly talking about this stuff, but that's pretty remarkable. And so I think people will read some of the stuff that I got to see, and most agents could do the same and write about them. I just do it better. Um, I bring some humor and insight to it, but also uniquely because I never met a Baptist pastor who became an FBI agent.
No, and actually, how did that happen?
I was working in the church, and we had a church that was doing very well. I had started with a core group of people. We planted it, and I told that core group, I want us to have a church free of judgment. I want us to reach out to people who don't feel like they fit in church. And I even gave them a flinch test to say, hey, if somebody comes to our church and they're wearing a concert t-shirt that says Def Leppard, can you greet them without flinching? What if you smell alcohol in their breath? What if there's piercings? What if they're a gay couple? Like, we need to be able to let them feel very honestly like this is a place for them. Unfortunately, even though we were doing very well and I was doing church the way I thought it should, when you reach out to people who haven't been in church before, a lot of them have personal issues and they brought those with them. And I was not capable of doing my job in a way that separated me from their problems. So for 2 years straight, every single day of my life, I had stress related headaches because I couldn't let go of their stuff. And so, and this is true, I had to find a job with less stress. And so I joined the FBI.
Where there's so many more detailed, horrific things.
But it was different stress. That like even the hard things that I saw, that some of the stuff we're talking about, where I say, let's talk about something nicer. It didn't bother me because I didn't own it. I could try to bring justice for that young boy, and I did. I could try to find that teenage girl and get her away from that guy, and we did. And they still had problems beyond, and maybe their life wasn't solved, but I did my part, and now I could move on to next task. I could go to a house where a guy with guns might oppose us violently and break in a door and arrest him, and now I'm done and move on to next task. So that stress now goes away.
Right. Whereas a pastor, you're never off,
I
even
wasn't
on your
able
days
to.
off. Yeah.
I wasn't able to, and other men have been better at it than me. So bless them. But I can
Well,
shoot better than they can. So there's that.
and apparently write better than them too.
I think so.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there is anything. Oh, we did want to talk about DARVO a little bit.
Oh
I've
yeah,
mentioned
sure.
it before in other episodes, but that's something that is not specific just to domestic violence. It's also, like I said, trafficking and domestic violence do intersect quite a bit. But could you just discuss DARVO a little bit?
So DARVO is an acronym for deny what is being said to you. So the offender will do this. They'll deny that's not true, accuse, and reverse the victim and offender roles. So not only is that not true, but I'm going to throw things at you And how dare you say that to me, because you are harming me. So it the biggest part is this is a way that I gain control as an offender by putting you on your heels with my accusations, and then manipulating you, making you feel bad about what you're doing by saying you're the offender. Actually, you're the one attacking me. And so that's a uh, I don't know that the pimps are aware of the terminology, but that way of keeping whatever they can do to keep women on their or girls on their heels, they're going to use tactics like that.
Right. And it also, for the people outside, if they use that tactic, it makes them not look like the bad guy necessarily.
Yes, and now you know to shut up and stop questioning me. You can't bring something to me, and it doesn't even have to be something harsh. It could be something as simple as, yeah, I'm wondering if we have to do this, and now I'm going to turn that. If it's something I don't like you questioning me. Now I'm going to stop you. I'm going to accuse you of something, and then I'm going to try to make you feel bad because why would you bring that to me? And now put you in your place. So that's going to happen a lot in those domestic situations within where someone may be trafficked, and whatever types of control, I mean, it's going to be going from the beginning and leveling up. And there does not have to be physical violence. There can just be that threat or the presence or the knowledge. Like, you know that I can hurt you, or I demonstrate what I might do by punching walls or something like that. So I don't have to touch you. I don't even have to give a direct threat. I mean, it's very easily could be it's just my physical presence. But if I need to, I will also make that suggestion by punching a wall.
And it's that lasts with the victims, even once they're out of the situation, that hinders healing or slows down healing because you have that psychological remnant that's just stuck in there of where you think, I did something wrong. I was the perpetrator or the offender in these cases, or I'm not going to be believed, or any of those things.
Yes. And if I'm smart, I will not make marks on you, or perhaps there's one and now you can always be reminded of it, but there's much that can be done. And so now you're placed in a position where if you ever do think you have something to report or complain about, you question that, not only from what I've done, what the offender's done to make you question it, but because, well, it's not abuse because he hasn't hit me. And so it again, it's the two fish. How's the water? Well, what's water? You need someone who's outside of that fishbowl who can bring light to you. The kind of thing where when I pulled that boy out, with the parents, and he started to realize, oh, that is unnatural. A 27-year-old man shouldn't be with a boy half his age. That, now I can see this. I think that many victims, if they spoke with someone outside of the fishbowl, would get a reaction of, are you serious? Like, they would see shock, whereas you go, oh, I didn't realize. Those who are in it just don't realize.
Well, and then the deny and the attack and all of it, it also makes you question your own sanity. I guess that
Yeah.
didn't happen, or it didn't happen the way I thought it happened, or I overreacted to something that was really not that big of a deal.
Right. And that's what I'll say to you too, so that you do think that. I'll plant that, like, that didn't happen. And that comes in with the gaslighting of making you question your reality, not just actual events, but question your ability to gauge things or synthesize them well. Like, I can't trust myself to know what's right and wrong and what's going on.
Right. And if I can't trust myself, how do I trust anybody else to help me?
Well, you can only trust me because I'll let you know what's right and wrong. And now you're stuck. You just have to listen to the abuser, and now we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that we were supposed to talk about? We've talked about so many things.
Too many sad things. Too many
I
sad
know.
things.
Unicorns and rainbows. Let's talk about those.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if somebody wants to follow along with you and get updates on your book and anything else, how do they do that? How do they get in touch with
We'll
you?
have the website going in time, and so they'll be able to follow that. But until then, on Instagram, I am _Eric_Robinson, which I'm amazed was not taken. I had used
Really?
yeah, I had used my social media just to lurk on bad guys, and my wife said, "Oh, you need to get rid of those and promote your book and stuff." So _Eric_Robinson, or on LinkedIn, Eric Robinson, and type in FBI and you'll find me. I don't know how that algorithm works, but if you see this face, you know you're at the right place.
Okay, perfect. Well, and then in closing, do you have any words of wisdom or encouragement that you would like to leave with listeners?
Uh, when I felt like on our task force of working violent crimes against children, we worked best when everybody had a role, where we knew what our role is in the FBI, and then when the guardian ad litem knew what they're doing, when we worked with juvenile detention, with them feeding us leads, and then even some of the um, local resources, groups that have been set up to help trafficked women, when everybody had their place, that really felt good. That it wasn't just us out there on an island, or it wasn't just someone in juvenile detention saying, "Oh my gosh, this girl's being trafficked and I can't do anything." Everyone had a role and had a place, and so I got to do that with the FBI. If you asked what can people do, look for those places where you can promote outreach, charities, domestic violence shelters, whatever it might be. And if you want to specifically help out with trafficking, then find that place that you can support. If it's a halfway house, or some type of safe house, there's openings for people to get involved, and I'm sure anyone who's running those places can use some hands.
Agreed. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on and all of your work. And everybody needs to look out for your book coming out later this year. In the fall?
In the fall.
In the fall.
But I'm working with the publisher. Hopefully, it gets bumped up to late summer. But publisher is a taskmaster.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Ingrid.
Thank you again for joining me today, Eric. And thank you, Warriors, for listening. I've included the links Eric was referring to, as well as his 1 in 3 profile, in the show notes. I will be back next week with another episode for you. Until then, stay strong. And wherever you are in your journey, always remember, you are not alone. Find more information, register as a guest, or leave a review by going to the website 1in3podcast.com. That's the number 1, IN, the number 3, podcast.com. Follow 1 in 3 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1 in 3 podcast. To help me out, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 1 in 3 is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.